Most people who commit SA don't apologize publicly, despite the fact that that is a horrifying and life-damaging action. Sometimes an apology and acknowledgement of the things that you did wrong and that the other person deserved better can give a victim a sense of closure. If you've been called out for saying something offensive or problematic and you want to use this to grow and learn from your mistakes, try to learn how to give more authentic apologies so you can actually maybe make a difference and lessen the harm that you do on that victim. Society teaches that apologies are weak, and most people struggle trying to find ways to come up with an authentic apology that shows that you care and want to change. If you struggle with apologies, that makes sense for the most part. They're so difficult because they make you vulnerable, where you admit that you've done something wrong, and this is just something that you might think people could potentially see, and it can be frightening. It's common to worry how you think people will react if you admit liability. But unfortunately, this tends to lead to poor responses from the people being called out. There are many traps that people fall into when apologizing, and this can just stem from the way that you were taught growing up. Children are reflexively taught to just say, "I'm sorry," after doing something wrong. This doesn't really change anything or make them take responsibility for their actions. It also doesn't stop them from making the same mistakes again. People tend to keep apologies fake without addressing what was actually done wrong and why it was wrong. Or say things like, "I'm sorry if I let you down or hurt you." This makes it seem like you're uncertain on whether what you did was wrong or not, and diminishes the apology. You should own up to what you did and be specific about why it was wrong. Don't just say, "I'm sorry if I made it feel like I was attacking you." Acknowledge specific events to show you understand what you did and what needs to change. The authors give an example of parents commenting on the lack of diversity in their child's school. One parent stated that their child had 2 black kids in their class, but they seem clean and well behaved. This implies that black children are not typically clean or well behaved, and is rooted in racial stereotyping that's hurtful. When someone called the parent out on this, the lady said, "I'm really sorry you heard my comment as racist." This is not an apology at all, and makes the problem seem to be the fact that the person reacted to the racist comment and not that the thing that that person said was harmful. No one's owning up to the harm here. It can also be problematic if you quickly follow up an apology with an excuse to try to lessen the blame. Even if you acknowledge that what you did was wrong, this denies the responsibility of the person at fault. There are countless examples of people avoiding ownership of their mistakes. Many people, when exposed for saying the N-word or racially profiling someone, then blames it on having taken a sedative or have been feeling off and sick as an explanation. Or apologize saying, "I'm sorry, but I was having a bad day," which shows justification of the harmful action and makes it seem like you might continue doing it. Sometimes providing context can help explain behaviors and lessen the harm, but in a lot of cases, people offer excuses just to make themselves feel better, not the person who was harmed. Another inauthentic apology is giving the excuse, "I didn't mean it that way," after saying something homophobic, transphobic, or racist. It doesn't matter if you didn't mean for it to be hurtful. It still has the same impact. It deflects responsibility and perpetuates the marginalization of real people that matter. Try to focus on impact and not intent. Obviously, if someone intended to harm you, that's worse than not meaning to do so, but it's still bad to unintentionally say something offensive, and you should want to correct that. An example the author describes is a teacher saying, an All Lives Matter quote during a speech. Some people might see this as harmless, but in actuality, it deflects from people of color speaking out about instances of violence by the police as a result of racial profiling and systemic bias. To properly apologize for this, someone could acknowledge how this phrase is invalidating and disrespectful, and they should own up to how inappropriate and hurtful it can be to people of color and the fact that it's rooted in prejudice. Another thing to avoid in your apology is saying, "I'm sorry, but I'm not racist or homophobic." One offensive comment doesn't make you horrible, but you should try to use your mistake to better yourself and grow so you don't do it again. That being said, while it's good to own up to your mistakes, don't oversend your apology where you focus on how bad you feel, because this can make the victim feel pressure to comfort you. One example is when someone misgenders a trans individual or non-binary person and they over-apologize. By making it about how bad you feel for a mistake, this makes the apology less impactful and can often lead to that misgendered person having to spend their own energy to comfort or reassure the person who is apologizing. This makes the apology about the perpetrator and not the victim. Apologies can become meaningless if someone doesn't fix their behaviors so they don't keep making the same mistakes. Speak with the person that you offended and see how you can make things better in the future. There's no healing until there's growth. Take the time to do your research and put effort in. Good apologies should consist of recognition, responsibility, remorse, and redressing, aka taking steps to repair the damage and learn from your mistakes. I reread this chapter again last night, and this morning when I went on TikTok, I saw a creator addressing a transphobic comment that they made, saying that trans women should tell their boyfriends that they're trans before sleeping with them, because she saw someone who had slept with a guy, and then once she had told him that she was trans, he attacked her physically. The creator said that she didn't want anyone to get hurt if they didn't tell the boyfriend first, and they thought they were doing something good by trying to show concern for someone. And although this comment is really hurtful, I thought that the video that she posted after this did a really good job in her response. She admitted that the comment was transphobic and said there's no excuse. Even if she didn't intend for it to be transphobic, it was. It still resulted in someone getting harmed. She said, "Even if I don't see myself and my views as transphobic, I need to see that my action was." She said a fan had commented to explain why what she said was wrong in a polite manner, and even though she didn't previously know what dead naming was, she learned from it and will no longer do that. She saw her ignorance and how it could negatively impact her trans supporters and used it to bring up this topic and admit wrongdoing. She then said in order to grow from the incident, she had to admit that she misgendered someone and that dead naming someone is wrong. I thought her apology used a lot of the tips that the authors used, and it can be a positive example of how to use your mistakes to grow from them and try to improve yourself so you don't do it again. Obviously, apologies can be really challenging, but that doesn't mean that you should give up on trying to craft authentic apologies when you've done something wrong.